Can you believe that? That's right. This is I don't know, is it a paranormal channel? I guess we're in the paranormal. Wizard, what do you think?
I think it's a paranormal channel, but we also dive into religions and dive into cryptids and unexplained animal activity and things. It's really a lot of things go on Can You Believe That?
Yeah, so, I mean, we're the channel for all things weird, and we're happy to have you guys. So I'm Tomy Durant. I work in television as a day job, and, I like to explore the weirdness. And for the last 20 years, I've been a paranormal consultant. And then we have over here, my dear friend, the car wizard. He's not just any wizard.
That's me. A lot of the videos are like the one we're doing today is going to be me learning, because I'm not a paranormal wizard. You're the paranormal wizard, but I do have a religious background that I kind of bring to some of the stories. But today, it's my turn to learn. And I'm very interested about our topic today of time travel.
Yes, time travel. It is a crazy thing. And I'm sure all of you out there in the YouTube rabbit hole have come across videos of this guy came from the future to tell us this, or why is that woman in that Charlie Chaplin video using a cell phone? That's crazy. Well, whether those videos are real or not, hard to say, but we have some interesting stories. But I want to talk about the theory of time travel first, Wizard, because we got to give people a baseline, right?
Right.
So for you, what do you think of when you think of time travel?
I view time travel as in life as we know it exists on different planes of existence. You can hop from one plane into the future. It's almost like slices in time, and they're all coexisting at the same time. And if there's some way that you could travel between these slices of time, you could go backwards, you could go forward. There's a lot I don't understand, but I also understand about the idea of it. I also understand in time travel that whether you go to the past or to the future, you as the time traveler are really advised not to tamper with the timeline. I know that for a fact. You could end up jeopardizing your own existence.
Yes.
So
I think all of us remember the Back to the Future moments when the photographs started fading, right? There really is that, I guess, potential. I mean, right? Because we don't know, and science doesn't really have a full grasp on it. But it's interesting. We talk about how certain ghosts, or especially demons and non-human entities, they exist in this realm outside of time, because a day, a week, a month, it's nothing to them, right? We talked about that in some of our previous episodes. So maybe they're just tapped into something that it's hard for us because we live these linear lives. Like you said, it's a bunch of slices, but they're all right there next to each other. I'm not a scientist. I'm not pretending to be a scientist. I'm an artist and a paranormal investigator. So, in terms of the science, I'm going to let you guys debate that in the comments. And I want to start with a really interesting story in very recent times, actually, Wizard.
Okay.
We know that our friends, the Soviets, had been involved in a lot of psionic experiments, meaning things of psychic nature. Even the United States, we got into it with Project Stargate, which we talked about in our telepathy tapes episode.
Yeah.
Click somewhere over here if you want to watch that. It's a great episode. So with this idea of psychic phenomenon, it's really funny. You go to the Soviets and they've been doing all this research. And one of the things that came up was from one of their most brilliant scientists. However, he was also someone that was seen as having gone crazy. So let's take this with a grain of salt. So let me take you back to the 1960s. There was a gentleman named Kozyrev who, as he was at university as an educator, a professor, one of his students happened to go after an entire department that he was part of, physics department, and made it seem like they're kind of against this establishment. So Stalin had them all round up, killed most of them, but Kozyrev somehow survived because they thought, maybe when he gets out, he could be useful again, I guess. And so they put him in the gulag for, it was supposed to be 20 years, but he did only 10 years. Now, the thing about Kozyrev that's interesting is he had an eidetic memory. What that means, he's like photographic memory. The guy could look at something, remember all the words, all the pictures, everything, which is crazy.
Wow.
I wish I was like that. I can't remember hardly anything.
I'm the opposite.
The forgetic memory, right? It's like
Yeah, that's right.
short term, no good. But Kozyrev, as he's locked up in a solitary confinement cell for 10 straight years, he started thinking about Einstein's relativity theories and time travel. And it kind of came to him that maybe there's a way that I can create a device where we can see through time. His theory started out with the idea that time is just another form of energy, like gravity or like solar particles, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What if you could capture that energy and concentrate it into one spot, Wizard? What do you think would happen?
Anytime you concentrate energy, it could explode. It could become volatile. I could see that as being dangerous, Tommy. I don't know if I would want to concentrate any kind of energy in one certain spot.
Well,
What happened? What happened here? I guess I'm curious.
you would be kind of right, and we're going to get to that in a minute. There is something that happened that was very strange, weird, and potentially dangerous. So Kozyrev comes up with this idea, like, let me concentrate time energy in this mirror device. And his mirror was essentially a composite aluminum that's highly reflective, but you have to make it into some sort of spiral shape. So there's an inner chamber because you're trapping the time energy. Like, he worked it all out. Unfortunately, he passed away before he got a chance to try his device. But
That's too bad.
the Soviets, in their patriotism, the brilliance of Kozyrev was brought back out, and two scientists decided that they were going to endeavor to create Kozyrev's mirror. So in the 1990s, yes, more recent history. I know for millennials that's a long time ago, but for those of us in our 40s or plus, the 90s were not that far away. So
Yeah.
in the 90s, these two scientists in Russia went to a remote outpost town called Dixon, out kind of in the Arctic Circle. They decided to start doing these experiments. They created their own Kozyrev mirror, have people come in, try the mirror out. So somebody would walk in through the spiral of the mirror, sit down in the middle, then they would turn it clockwise about 1.5 times, which was meant to concentrate the time energy, and all weirdness broke out. They documented everything. Their journals are very, very scientifically organized, and it's cool because all of the stuff they recorded, there was everything from UFOs seen outside the facility when they were doing their work to literal changes in Earth's magnetism in the region to people feeling a presence. And then all the participants of the study who went into the Kozyrev mirror, they weren't allowed to interact with each other, but there were common threads between all of them. Like, they would see symbols that would glow and appear to them. Then they also, a lot of them reported meeting a tall white figure, kind of like an alien, but we're not sure because of the UFO activity. That's what some of us think are ultra-dimensional beings, which is something we'll talk about at some point down the road. And then other people would see into the past. They were able to see like Roman battles taking place or things of that nature. It did have a little bit of the time travel, but there was also all this other weirdness around it. And one of the cooler things about this experiment is, after the fact, many of the participants reported continuing activity outside the Kozyrev mirror, including a few people who said that they were now able to see auras, or they had precognition, or they felt or heard some force interacting and talking to them, and even sometimes taking control of them, which is really scary, honestly.
That, to me, Tommy, we're talking about time travel, but what you're describing to me, it sounds to me as if they opened a portal where some people saw the past, and that would be the time travel aspect of this mirror. But then having experiences outside of the mirror, it's almost like something's followed them, like they opened a portal. It sounds like there's multiple things going on here.
Yeah, I mean, the UFO sightings are pretty crazy. The weird aurora borealis effects that people saw outside were also crazy. The fact that there was an actual recorded scientific magnetic shift during one of the experiments, that's crazy. But you're right, it does remind me of some sort of portal opening. And I'll say this, I kind of think about it like Nostradamus. So I used to do a podcast called Altered States Paranormal Radio. And
Mm-hmm.
in that podcast, I got to interview all kinds of amazing people, including people we've talked about on this show. One of the people we talked to was a guy named John Hogue. He's a huge scholar of Nostradamus. For those who don't know Nostradamus, he is probably the most world-renowned prophet, and it was reported that he would record things he would see in a black obsidian mirror and write out his quatrains, which were his kind of entries. And people would ascribe all kinds of stuff that's happened. Like, he purportedly talked about Hitler, and I'll be honest, like, his interpretation of Hitler, he missed the name by a couple letters. He called him Hister instead of Hitler.
Hister. Yeah, I've heard of that before.
Yeah, I mean, and Napoleon was also in his list of people. But that's what he did. He had a full ritual. He did like a whole cleansing ritual and incense, and then he'd sit down and he'd scry, that's what we call it, scrying, in this black obsidian mirror that was concave. And that was kind of the basis of Kozyrev's mirror, was a concave aluminum surface that would trap the time energy. So is it possible that trapping that kind of energy, just like you said, opened a portal to something? Maybe it was time, maybe it was just seeing through different realities. It's hard to say, but I think of it like a time travel mirror of sorts. So I find that kind of fascinating and thought it was perfect to share with you all today.
That is very interesting. Those types of things, I guess I would be more leery, being from my Christian background, is you sit inside of this mirror. What is really going on? Are you inviting something in that you shouldn't be? Or are you just simply time traveling and nothing more? Or are you opening portals to let extraterrestrial beings or spiritual beings see you? Obviously, they say they had experiences outside of the mirror. It's as if some force knew that they were there and was following them, or had given them abilities to see auras, like you mentioned, or see different things. So I guess my fear would be, I'm going into this for time travel, but there may be a whole lot of baggage that comes with this that's not anticipated, not planned for, and it may have severely adverse effects. I would be very afraid, actually.
And you should be, because one of the things that they noted when they first put the mirror in place, before participants were even going in, there was this overwhelming sense of dread and fear, like irrational fear, that people would have just around the mirror. And people would see a lot of dark shadows. And so, putting my occultism hat on here, Kozyrev invented this in a solitary confinement cell in a gulag after 10 years of isolation, right? So is it possible that something was manipulating him as his mental degradation took place? Because it did seem to affect him in a way that made him kind of crazy. And when he came out, like, people thought, oh, here's this respected scientist again, and let's have him do stuff. And then he spouted off about the Kozyrev mirror and then a bunch of other stuff. And they were like, oh no, this guy's lost his mind in the gulag. Is it possible that something was preying on his loneliness in there, or, on his mental degradation? Yeah, it's definitely possible. And based on what people had experienced with the Kozyrev mirror, I don't think I'd step in it.
No, I don't think I would. And another thing that brings to mind with the whole Kozyrev mirror, in all cultures, in all walks of life here on Earth, different religions, there are people, shamans or witches or different types of people that can see the future or see the past. You go to visit these people because you have questions about the future or the past.
Yeah.
And throughout these different cultures, they're not using technology to get these answers. What are they using? They're asking the spirits, and a lot of times they're dark spirits. They can be demons, they can be evil spirits. Maybe not always, but I think that time travel is a real thing. I think it's possible to see into the future, see into the past. But ultimately, with this mirror you're talking about, I wonder if it's truly just some sort of evil access. They've created an access into something that they may have regretted. They could have regretted.
Yeah, and you know what? Right up until their deaths, both of the scientists that headed these projects, one was involved with the UN quite a bit, trying to tell them, hey, we shouldn't allow people to just do psionic experiments because they're dangerous. So good on him. The other one kind of just faded out and said, I'm good. Don't need to do this anymore. So
yeah.
I see a lot with like certain paranormal cases too. When you have a team of people that go into a really gnarly case, it changes people innately. And
Mhm.
coming out, like, people will kind of splinter apart and go their own way. And some people will never deal with the paranormal again. Some people will find faith. Some people will dive deeper into the darkness. And so I think, like anything, you have to be aware of that, aware of yourself. And in terms of this situation with the Kozyrev mirror, like, were they time traveling? No, nobody was going anywhere. Even though the participants said they felt like they were there, their physical body was still here. So there's some spiritual component, I think, or some metaphysical, we'll say, component to this. But, in terms of like time travel, going back to our main point here, there's not a lot of real evidence of people actually physically time traveling to a different place, but seeing into the future, seeing into past, like you said,
Yeah.
psychics and soothsayers and oracles. And, there's all these people that have claimed to be able to do that.
Well, I know one thing, Tommy, that there's another danger to time travel, no matter how you go about it, is that once you access it and get into it, that our human brains can't even physically process what we're seeing or what's happening and how it's working and the
Yeah.
inner workings of it all. Here's something interesting from a Christian perspective. God knows the beginning and the end of all things simultaneously at the same time. There is no beginning, there is no end. It's all at the same time. I mean, there's things about time travel or viewing time, I guess you could call it. You could get into a realm where your brain can't even process what even's going on. Maybe that's why the creator, to me, has limited our abilities, like you mentioned, to physically actually do it, because we would end up somewhere and think about the time continuums and things that are happening. We wouldn't even be able to process what's going on.
The brain has a lot of defense mechanisms for things like that. When things are
Yeah.
so outside of our rational mindset, we either go into denial, we somehow recreate a new story in our head to kind of match what we're seeing, or it literally breaks you. There's not a lot of
Yeah.
other options out there.
It could break you. That's right.
Yeah, so I don't want to be broken, so I'll avoid the Kozyrev mirror. I'm good.
Yeah.
But again, maybe an evil device. But there's another device called the Chronovisor that was actually created by somebody who's a Vatican trained exorcist.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
The Vatican has this technology or this ability?
Supposedly the Vatican has it deconstructed deep in their archives, I will say, deep in the archives. And ever since this gentleman came out, they have denied. But given the names that this person said they worked with and given some of the stories, there may be some truth to it, Wizard.
I know that they're in the Vatican, in their archives and things. There are probably things that are unthinkable, things that have been released that we don't even know about, that have powers, abilities. It doesn't surprise me that they could have something like this, but it does surprise me. Instead of seeking some sort of prayer or some sort of way of talking to God to see these things, is it a piece of technology? I'll tell you, Chronovisor sounds to me like a motorcycle helmet or something you could put on and see the future.
Well,
So I'm interested to you to describe this to me.
Kind of. I mean, not a motorcycle helmet, but yes, a device to view time with, literally, Chronovisor time viewing, right?
Okay.
This thing was made 3 different parts, right? The first part was a bunch of antennae and receptors. The second part was what they called the tuner, meant to help you find the person or time or thing you were trying to locate through time. And then there was a television set type device on the bottom that would turn whatever was received into images, which the people described to be as kind of holographic in nature, but black and white. Kind of futuristic, kind of retro. Hard to say what it really was, because again, this thing was torn apart and thrown in the Vatican archives, if it even existed at all. But it was the brainchild of Father Pellegrino Ernetti, who was a scholar of music. He became a scientist. He got degrees in science and physics. Brilliant man. Was also one of the lead exorcists for the Vatican in Italy. So can't be a bad dude. Well, maybe, but I don't think he's a bad dude. He seemed like a nice guy. What he wanted to do is he wanted to find a way to prove to the world that Jesus existed, that the whole idea of Christianity and Catholicism was based in fact, because even the church was really kind of like, a lot of this stuff's allegory. It's not real. And as a Christian, Wizard, I'm sure, like, for you, you believe that the Bible is reality, right?
Yes. I mean, most Christians believe that the Bible is spoken word of God and it's infallible, and everything that's in there would be accurate or true, or events that really happened or things that are going to happen, they would be reliable. Yes.
Yeah. And in Catholicism, there's slowly been kind of a schism between the people that believe what you believe and the people who think, it's just stories to keep us morally okay. So Ernetti was like, look, I want to prove that Jesus existed, that this is what happened, that these stories are real. How do I do that? Well, he was a big scientific brain in terms of harmonics. And he kind of got the idea of like, okay, well, maybe time, like sound, we can find those waves and tune into those waves.
Mm-hmm.
And so supposedly, and again, there's no evidence to prove this, but supposedly he got a team of elite scientists from across the world. There was a Nobel Prize winner out of Japan, which there was only one back then. There was Werner von Braun, who is one of the reasons why we went to the moon. He was an ex-Nazi scientist that came over in Project Paperclip, which was a U.S. operation to bring those people over to help us build rockets. Supposedly he was involved in this project. Then you had a bunch of other brilliant people, including the famous physicist Fermi, who, Fermi paradox, like he's a well-known name. And again, Nobel Prize winner, brilliant man. And a few other people that were a handful of people that came in and helped this project out. So they worked for 2 years tirelessly to create something that somehow could receive the waves of time and turn them into images so we could capture it. Now, according to Ernetti, they had in fact been able to tune into specific pieces of history. After a lot of work, we're able to see, and from what's been described, Jesus Christ, and watched everything from the Last Supper to his crucifixion. And they even talk about the resurrection, which is crazy, and what that looked like. And describing it, it's like you're almost seeing a person through alabaster, and it was beautiful but yet sad and moving, but like watching the torment of Jesus as he's walking his way up to the hill and talking about, what was the name of the gentleman who helped Jesus carry his cross?
Simon.
Okay. So Father Ernetti even talked about how they watched that moment where Simon helped, and he says the scripture, it seemed incorrect. It wasn't fully true because Simon didn't really want to help, but then ended up having to help because the Romans needed Jesus to get there alive. So even contradicting his own faith, he came out with this information. And even though, yes, it did support saying Jesus was our Lord and Savior, it was this moment of like, oh, we have this thing, and now what do we do? And it turns out like seeing a bunch of other interesting historic stuff that they could validate, including some Mussolini speeches and a few other things. They really thought they had something special here and something that worked. And of course, what happens next?
Something bad happened. It exploded or something.
No. I wish it was that exciting. No. What happens next is the Vatican says, you know what? Nobody should have this. So we're going to have you all dismantle this and never talk to anyone about it.
Of course. Yeah.
And then off to the archives, the pieces of it go. And Ernetti is just kind of there. And, for years, he just doesn't get to talk about it. But he met a young father named Father Brune, who was visiting at the time. And they got to talking. And he started talking a little bit about the Chronovisor to Father Brune. And Brune was like, well, you should share this. So eventually, he started sharing the story of the Chronovisor. Now, by the time it came out, all of the scientists that were on this were dead and gone, except for Father Ernetti. So there was no way to prove it. And kind of Ernetti was sort of coaxed by some media magazines and newspapers to provide evidence. You're talking about this thing, there's got to be photographs. And so eventually some things came out that he didn't say was direct from the Chronovisor, but he didn't say it wasn't. And so people will be like, the Chronovisor, that's hogwash, right? The picture of Jesus from the Chronovisor, that's BS. That's just a statue. Father Ernetti's talk about that is like, okay, yeah, this isn't an actual photograph from it, but this is what it looked like. And sure enough, like the photograph he chose was of a statue that was carved by an artist who was listening to a nun who supposedly kept having visions of Jesus in the crucifixion. Anyway, long story short, you could battle back and forth all day, whether it was real or whether it wasn't real. But Father Ernetti believed it was real. And Father Brune believed that Ernetti was telling the truth. With what we believe is in the Vatican archives, I know a lot of supposition here, I think it's very possible. And this story carries into today where you have movies like Minority Report with Tom Cruise or Deja Vu. I actually worked at a company doing feature development, and I read the initial script for Deja Vu. And it came out eventually starring Denzel Washington. But that whole thing was about seeing into this portal that would go through time, and could you affect time? Could you somehow reach through this doorway or this portal? And it's kind of cool to think what would have happened had they been able to keep the chronovisor working and in operation. But for all we know right now, it's just sitting in some basement in the Vatican, and we could be using it to validate history or for Christianity to be able to say, look, see, everybody, he's real. He was here. He did these things. But no, they won't let us have it because they felt it was too dangerous.
I could see it being dangerous, but I could see the Vatican saying dismantle the chronovisor, because although the idea is very genuine to want to research historical facts or to see how things really happened, maybe see a real dinosaur or things of that nature, but we all would want to know, if we have that power, that ability, what's going to happen to me? And I don't think we're meant to know that information, because it could severely ruin the outcome of the rest of your life. If you could look into the chronovisor and see you're a 25, 30-year-old male, you've got 3 little kids, and you look into this thing and says, you're not going to make it past 45, you're going to get in an accident, one of your kids will become an occultist, the other kid's going to be a murderer. I didn't want to know that.
Well, hey, not all occultists are bad, by the way,
No,
Wizard.
I mean a bad one.
Okay, all right. I'm right here, dude. I'm right here.
one that conjures evil to hurt people.
Okay, good. All right, let's keep me out of that one.
But sometimes you don't want to know what happens to you or family members in the future. Now, if you're just generally looking into what happened to the dinosaurs or things like that, I could see that. But that brings to mind 2 movies. The first movie is The Time Machine. And what I'm going to get into now is we've been talking about using a device to see or view the future, but the dangers of physically going into the future, your own body or the past.
I had to stop and find out.
And if you were to use a time machine, like the movie Time Machine, that physically takes you to another place or another time. We've all seen the movie Interstellar, where they were just space traveling, but inadvertently ended up time traveling.
Every moment, it's infinitely complex. They have access to infinite time and space, but they're not bound by anything.
And there are places you can go or things that you can cause to happen where every minute of your life goes by. 70 years of your family's life just went by. And then you return back and they're all dead. I mean, that's where I was talking about, that our brain can't process that. It's like, but I was only there for 10 minutes and 700 years went by. There's just things that would happen that we'd like, what do we do now? What's the next step? I mean, you could really get in a huge bind and severely affect your mental health and probably the well-being of your own health for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with that. And that's the idea of the theory of relativity, right? It's like at a certain point, time's going to be different for you if you're moving a certain speed, right? So
right.
I think like our brains would have a hard time conceiving going into the future for sure, because look how much technology has changed from the early 1900s to just 2000 or 2020. Right. Like, do you think people from the early 1900s would look at all our technology and think, oh, that's fine? No, they'd be like, what are you talking about? A computer? Right. What's a computer on your phone? Like, I don't know why I'm doing that old-timey voice, but oh, your phone is a computer. You play a game on this? They would have never known, the possibilities. And I think even us seeing future technology, which again, we've talked about in our UFO episode, UAP episode, are these just future humans that have time traveled back because they have the technology? At this point, we're still thinking that they might be alien. And for all we know, they're just future humans. So it's super interesting to me, but I do worry about if people find the way to time travel, what are the dangers? And to me, the dangers are innumerable. You don't know what you don't know, right? Like it's these unknown unknowns of, do you step on a butterfly in one country and that creates a tsunami in another country, kind of the butterfly effect, whatever they call it. You know, is it butterfly effect? Is it you erase your own self from the timeline? Like, it, you know, I don't know. It's just fraught with danger. And it kind of makes me think, I just don't want to touch it.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind if they had technology proven a screen that you could see things in the past or future. That would be interesting. But if they said, now we have a device that will take you there, I would not be interested in being taken somewhere. I'd never see my family again, or something could go wrong. You want to go 40 years into the future or 100 years into the future, and something doesn't go as planned and you end up 400 million years into the future. And you don't even know how to operate or even what to do. I've often thought about even going into the past, maybe a meeting between Nikola Tesla or Westinghouse or any of these great pioneers of electricity, and you brought an iPhone with you that still somehow could have Wi-Fi back then. And you just showed them what they could do. I don't think they would, as smart as they were, I don't even think they could comprehend an iPhone.
Yeah.
I think they would be silenced and they would probably actually reject it. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, I look at technology now, right? Like, how many times do you know, like, you go to your parents or your grandparents with, like, your phone? I mean, prime example, right? Anytime I'm at my family's house when my parents were still alive, it was always like, hey, can you look at the TV? The remote's not working, you know? And that's just a remote. Like, that's been around for a while. That's not even new technology. Anytime there was a problem with the computer or the phone, hey, can you take a look? It's because we kind of do evolve with our technology. Like, that's just the trajectory of humanity. So as we're evolving with our technology, we're learning as we go. And again, like with AI right now, I think there's still a lot of unknown unknowns that can cause problems because, hey, I watched Terminator. I know what could happen. But for some reason, these tech bros want to just do this thing. And yeah, maybe AI has a lot of great things that will come of it, but it'll likely just have as many bad things that come with it. Just like the devices we talked about, like the Chronovisor, like Kosyrev's mirror, like these things have the potential to be great, but they also have the potential to cause a lot of harm or cause issue. So that's where time travel for me is kind of a no-go. Like, I just don't think it's a good idea. Like doing tarot card readings for people. Prime example, I used to do tarot card readings for people, and I know that's going to turn a lot of folks on this channel off, but my intention was always good. It was just to help people through hard times. And when they'd ask me, like, I want to see the future, it's like, well, no, because I'm not here to tell you about the future, because that will change your course of events. What I'm here to do is help you look at what's happening now in your life and make better decisions to traverse that. That's how I treated it. And seeing someone's future, like you said before, Wizard, it could cause a lot more problems than it can help solve. So I think we just all have to maybe don't make any weird mirrors in the Arctic Circle that can bring UFOs or who knows what beings in.
Please don't do that. Don't get a weird concave aluminum polished mirror and sit in the middle of it and spin it one. Don't do that.
You know, one of the mechanics from your that watches your channel is going to be on here watching this and want to rebuild that. You know that, right? It's going to happen.
They may try to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't suggest that. By the way, is there a disclaimer? Maybe I put a disclaimer here right now. Do not build a Kosyrev mirror.
Yes, do not build a Kosyrev mirror or try to recreate the Chronovisor or anything like that. Yeah, that's a bad idea. The Car Wizard does not endorse that type of activity, not at all.
So now you have disclaimers from both of us. So if you do it, send pictures or comment below because we'll be interested, but we don't think you should. But speaking of comments below, Wizard, do you mind if we answer a few questions from our viewers?
Let's do it, yeah.
This first one is from, looks like a Dutch person because it's Bart Molendijk. Oh, I'm sorry, Bart. I really just ruined your name there. Bart M. Dutch is what we'll go with. They write, always found it funny that UFO and Bigfoot sighting only happen in the USA. Well, in our Bigfoot Encrypted episode, we did talk about this a little bit. So if you haven't seen that, I do suggest you look at it. But yeah, there's plenty of Bigfoot sightings, encrypted sightings in other countries. Wizard, you're the one who told me about the Yemen?
Yeren.
Yemen is a country. I'm sorry. Yeren. Shows you how educated this American is. Oh, God.
there's archaeological finds of Bigfoot or type Bigfoot creatures that goes clear back thousands of years. There's in Africa and China and all over the world. I wouldn't say it's an American type of a thing going on.
Well, of course, then you have Yeti, which was, not American at all. That's out in the Himalayas, or Himalayas, however you pronounce it. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff that happens outside the U.S. It's not just here, and we're not that special.
No, not.
Next question. We have a lot of Bigfoot questions, so we're going to do quite a few because last time we had less questions, so we'll go through these. DNX5 writes us, how come in the age of HD cameras, Patterson's film is still the best known footage of a Bigfoot? There's been a lot of good footage captured over the years with HD cameras of things. It's just, it gets lost in the sauce because, again, there's a lot of media out there, and even us, like, we're adding to the YouTube pool of stuff. I'd say you just got to look for it. There's some really interesting photographs. There was a 2017 Bigfoot documentary that came out that had some interesting photos, which are very compelling. It just may not be as impressive as the Patterson Gimlin film, but at the same time, like, it's hard to catch a phenomenon that's so rare. And when you're in a moment, sometimes, like, you see something, it's hard to force yourself to say, oh yeah, let me get my camera out. Because you're kind of just experiencing it. Maybe nowadays, younger folks, because they do this all the time when they're out doing things and like at concerts, maybe they'll be the ones to capture it because they're much more ready for it. But for me, if I see something crazy in nature, I'm not thinking of my phone. I'm just enjoying the thing or seeing the thing.
Yeah.
If it's a Bigfoot, probably trying not to pee my pants again,
Mm-hmm.
Not that I've done it before.
Hopefully you don't still pee your pants.
No, I don't.
Okay, good.
Next question from Thomas Groh, Groh, 8220. And this Thomas says, where do you think most Bigfoot live?
Where do I think they live? They're usually found in wooded regions. So you don't usually find them in an open desert in the plain in the middle of nowhere with no trees, nowhere to hide. I would say in caves. If they are in the desert, they could be in some caves, but definitely in wooded areas, heavily wooded, where they could either build structures or have materials to work with. Caves they could hide in, running water, streams, and things of that nature. I don't know that anyone's ever seen one in the middle of New York City or the middle of Dallas, walking around down Main Street or something. It's always out somewhere in wooded areas, it seems like. What do you think, Tommy?
Definitely not Dallas, let me tell you. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cases throughout all of Canada. So everywhere from the province of Ontario all the way to Alberta and to the Northwest Territories. And then in the US, like obviously Sasquatch is a Northwestern Native American name for the being. So a lot of sightings here in Washington State, where I live, and Oregon and Northern California, Patterson Gimlin film in Northern California. Really, like you said, it's a lot of areas that are kind of away from people. And there's a YouTube channel called Small Town Monsters. I'll give them a shout out. They do a lot of Bigfoot content, like a lot of Bigfoot content. So if you're interested, those guys do a great job. They travel everywhere from Alaska to Ohio to, down south looking for Bigfoot and sharing their stories. So if you're interested, that's a great channel to go to. And yeah, Ohio has a Bigfoot. Who would have thought? And even Kansas, as we mentioned in our cryptid episode, has a Bigfoot. So they're kind of anywhere where there's less people, which makes sense because you don't want to be around people.
That's why we named the channel Can You Believe That? Because there's a lot of Can You Believe That going on. Yeah,
I couldn't believe it at first, and now here we are. We're, several episodes deep, and the rabbit hole keeps getting deeper. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, couple more questions here, Wizard.
Okay.
This was in regards to our Giants episode, which just dropped recently. Mr. XC. Historically, people of the past were shorter. So is it possible that people wrote of giants and they were just people like Andre the Giant?
I don't know. Possibly. And it is true that even if you go back to the 1920s or the 1890s, generally people are 5'8", 5'10", 6 foot range now. Most males are, and women. I guess it really doesn't matter what gender. Most people are about that height anymore.
Yeah.
But if you go back in time, most people were 5'2". So I don't know why. I don't know what's the phenomenon going on there. But I don't think if you go way back in time that people are only 3 foot tall or 4 feet tall. They're generally adults, 5.5 feet tall at least. So whether a person was 8 foot, 10 foot, it wouldn't make that huge of a difference. They're probably, to me, 10 foot or taller.
Yeah, and as we talked about in the Giants episode, like they use different units of measurement to describe these people. So in terms of like some of the Spaniards that came in, they were saying they were so many palms high, which again,
Yeah.
weird unit of measurement. They were talking about beings that were, like you said, Wizard, in the 7, 8, 9, 10 foot range plus. So we can determine that based on the writings and what they were comparing people to. So there is this idea that they were much larger, like way larger.
Way larger.
You know, even if I'm 6'2", so, well, 6'2" on a good day, 6'1" maybe. You know, if I'm next to somebody who's 5 foot, like my wife is 5'2", like, yeah, she's short, but when they're talking about, like, we only came up to the waist of this person in their journals, like, the Spaniards weren't like 3'5", you know, they were probably over 4 or 5 feet tall. So if you're coming up to the waist of, you know, some big hombre, you know, chances are they may not have, I mean, maybe they did have gigantism, but the fact that they were talking about tribes of these people, I don't know. I seem to think that there's probably something to it still.
I think so too.
We believe in giants.
So thanks again, guys, for watching. We handled time travel, talked about all the different aspects of it, and there's many, many more cool videos to come that's going to address topics that we haven't even thought of yet. With the comments you guys place and the questions, that can be topics for future videos. So make sure to hit the subscribe button, share these videos with other people, and here's to hundreds and hundreds, many more videos, all for you guys, informative and peaceful. Thanks for watching.
Bye, everybody.